thrilled to be invited by my baseball brothers, the legends that are JC, Big Dave Lingo, and Eric, the producer. Boys, lovely to have your company.
Goldie,
Hey.
big rugby weekend for you.
Big rugby weekend, but more significant than that, Spinal Tap update. Have I watched it? No. Move on. New business. Thank you. Vast rugby. Thank you for mentioning it, JC. Just go. If my
Why
voice,
did you mention that?
If my
He
voice
needs,
sounds
he needs
a
a
little
special
husky,
moment, Davey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The boys, blue, black, and white. It's not been a great season, lads, but we finished on a high with a cracking win in a very thrilling game. So, and the fact was there was 3,500 of us in the stadium. Guys, that's only the second time in 15 months. It was amazing. Anyway, move on swiftly.
Potentially, because yours truly has to step away for a while, because I've got a lot of other commitments. I've got Wimbledon coming up. I've got the Olympics coming up. So the Jonny and Josh Show shall still continue, but the important pieces will still be there.
No, the most important piece will be lost.
Exactly.
No,
JC, it'll just be like running the race without the baton.
You guys will be fine without me for a while.
Who's going to not pick Josh's books to review it?
Exactly. Who's going to leave? Can you leave the trivia questions at the door on your way out?
Josh wrote books.
But this is the last show from you for a while, so why don't we get our trivia question, and I'm hoping you're going to make it a special.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because as youthful and exuberant as we all are, I figured we were talking about Vlad Guerrero Jr., a player of fine Canadian stock, might I add, born in Montreal. He actually, this week hit his 19th home run.
Yep.
And he recently become the age of 22. Not bad for somebody at 22 years old, leading the league in home runs. But my question to you is, which of these players actually hit the most home runs before the age of 22? Career home runs. Okay. Was it A? Was it A, A-Rod? Was it B, Mike Trout? Or was it C, Bryce Harper?
Oh.
So which of those three players hit the most home runs before the age of 22?
I love the story about Vladimir Guerrero going back to Montreal to play in that exhibition game before his rookie season, and he went looking for the ice cream machine because when he was a kid and his father was playing for the Expos, he was always, first he'd get into Olympic Stadium and go right for that ice cream machine. But it wasn't
Exactly. He knew that stadium well.
We're all kids, Big Dave, when it comes to an ice cream. Right, moving on. Thank you for that, Eric. We'll get the answer to that trivia question from Josh, no doubt.
This last week, it's been, we've already elapsed 56 games for most teams in this past week in Major League Baseball, which would have meant that had this been last year, it would have been the end of the regular season. Which means that had the season ended a few days ago, we'd had Tampa Bay, Yankees, Red Sox, Astros, Oakland, Cleveland, White Sox, and Toronto in the American League playoffs. And in the NLCS, you would have had the Giants, Cardinals, Padres, Cubs, Mets, Braves, Brewers, and Dodgers fighting it out for supremacy.
The Braves even at 29 and 30. What a mess they are. What's going on?
What a mess that division is. So this goes to show, with roughly 100 to 95 games left this season, there's still a lot to play for. Moving on.
Let me ask you this, guys. When you think about the history of collective bargaining, it is amazing. I was looking into this, by the way. John Montgomery Ward and 8 other players in 1885 formed the first players' union in baseball. The Brotherhood of Professional Baseball Players Protective Association was created in 1900. Fraternity of Professional Baseball Players of America in 1912. So there's a rich history. This isn't like unions have only started.
Oh, they were crushed, though. Those guys were crushed. It wasn't until Kurt Flood. It wasn't until
Marvin Miller.
Marvin Miller, who
right.
I mean, you need to read his book, Goldie. It's one
Marvin Miller, of course, 1968, negotiated the first ever collective bargaining agreement. So, what I'm saying is, this is a story that even if they were crushed in the early days, this process started a long time ago. We're talking, almost 135 years ago. So it's been an issue. And obviously baseball has a rich history in terms of the strength of the players' union, the strength of feeling. And we have had lockouts by owners. 1990, 232-day strike in 94, 95. There is a history of the two sides going head to head and not coming to an agreement. So
the big issue to me often has been ownership, which sees players as fungible. They think that anybody who goes out, that the sport itself can carry the day and the stars aren't really important.
As
And
evidenced by the scabs, when we had the
right.
scabs. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's maybe some credence to that in baseball, right? We talk about how baseball doesn't have, the LeBron Jameses of the world. They never had the Michael Jordans. And it's been a long time since we saw a Mickey Mantle or a Babe Ruth, of these larger than life personalities that really could carry the day, right? When you're talking about Mike Trout. And that's why there's so much effort with a player like Tatis Jr. to make them larger than life figures. But until you have a large portion of players who have that Q rating, who are that well known, ownership's going to feel comfortable to say, look, we'll just change it. They're totally wrong. I mean, baseball's
totally
on the precipice of becoming it's already less relevant than it was 2-3 decades ago.
Yeah.
They need to be very careful. And I think that if there is another strike, baseball is going to become very much second tier in the United States. If it isn't there already.
They're not very careful, which is a huge problem, as evidenced by their leader, Rob Manfred, who is not very careful. So that precedent is already set with the commissioner. And if you think it was difficult for the game to come back after 94, watch what happens if they sit out a year about now, with everything going against professional sports right now in the ratings department, with all the competition that sports faces with, Netflix and streaming and everything else and TikTok. It's not, they better be extremely careful. And I worry about the players union because, Tony Clark, as smart as he is and as good a guy as he is, I think the players really took a hit with the death of Michael Weiner, who was, a highly respected leader of the Major League Baseball Players Union, which is seen by just about anybody you asked as the most, at least amongst the most powerful unions in the United States. And I think you can't underestimate the loss of his influence on the leadership of the players.
One of the problems with baseball, and this has always been the case, is that, right, ownership is incredibly wealthy. And that was a problem, in the 90s, it was a problem in the 50s, but it's a bigger problem now, right? The value of these teams are so high that the owners are even more disproportionately wealthy. And when you get people of that nature, they don't know how to react to no, right?
Yeah.
They're so used to having the power that if they're being told no, they're going to say, well, screw you. I'll just take my ball and go home.
Lords of the realm.
Yeah.
Now, just, of course, originally being from Montreal, nothing in my lifetime damaged baseball more than that 1994 strike, especially when the Montreal Expos were the best team in baseball that year. Season got canceled. The very next year, the 1995 season, after everything somehow got reorganized, Montreal finished dead last. And that was just the petri dish of what a mess a lockout/strike would do to baseball.
And Montreal gets a lot of attention when it comes to teams that, were victimized by the strike in 1994. But also, look west. The Blue Jays had won 2 World Series in a row, and that team took forever to get back. They left them behind. The Blue Jays fans, they walked, and they didn't come back for a very long time. And that's talked about less. It kind of took them, to 2013, 14, 15 before, the fans really came back in droves. Of course, that comes down to winning, but also they were really disgusted by 94. Oh, in Toronto.
Attendance went way down. That's it. Moving on.
So what's the book of the week, big guy?
The book of the week, I figure, I'll be honest here. I haven't read it yet. Okay, because it got recommended to me. And it's called The Summer of '68 by Tim Wendell. Okay. And the reason why it is recommended to me is because I'll tell you what, there was no better time to be born than the summer of '68. It's on my birthday today. Don't worry. You didn't miss it. I didn't get your card yet. Let's face it, the summer of '68, it was the time that the transition that changed baseball forever. It's when the pitching mound was changed. It was when we discussed the collective bargaining agreement. Is when the Detroit Tigers beat Bob Gibson and the St. Louis Cardinals. And
the mound changed after that season. It was the final season.
It's the final season, exactly, of the old pitcher's mound. And so it takes you through everything that changed baseball for better and worse. Of course, we had those riots in 1968. It's not just about baseball.
8 team divisions or 9-10 team divisions.
Exactly, and it's not just about baseball. That's when Robert F. Kennedy was murdered, and when Martin Luther King was murdered, and how baseball dealt with it, and it was a year of turmoil. So that's my book recommendation of the week, Summer of '68 by Tim Wendell, which I will read next. But
he promises.
So
I promise.
Just to clarify before you move on to your TV reference, on your last show for we know not how long, you're recommending a book you haven't even read over one of the many books that your dear friend Josh Cheswood has written.
Sure.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
The baseball and pop culture. I'm gonna mix in. How do you mix in the baseball, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the New York Mets into one and make it funny? Well, I'll tell you, it's with the,
Too soon?
It's gotta be Odd Couple.
It's a well, no, it's and then
No, they
this
do
week,
a Zapruder film, right? This was
it's June 14th, 1987, Mets versus Phillies. Those who are not attuned with Seinfeld episodes, there was one episode with Keith Hernandez, as mentioned by David earlier, befriends Jerry Seinfeld. And once Kramer and Newman, two other characters in that show, find out that Jerry's befriended Keith Hernandez, they say, "You can't." He spat at us outside Shea Stadium, and the whole episode sort of intermixes that Keith Hernandez spat on Newman and Kramer when they came out of the stadium, and then Keith Hernandez tries to say it wasn't him, and Jerry Seinfeld tries to recount the spitting incident between Keith Hernandez. While sort of doing it with the Kevin Costner's JFK scene, where they use the Zapruder film and likens it to the Lee Harvey Oswald assassinating JFK. And
only Seinfeld could get away with such bad taste. They
exactly.
made bad taste cool.
When Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David wrote the article, they actually had Keith Hernandez in mind for this scene. And they wrote it for Keith Hernandez, and then they approached him, and they thought, well, if he says no, we'll ask Gary Carter instead. So, so had Keith Hernandez said no, they would have been Gary Carter, but
it wouldn't have worked with Gary Carter.
The second spitter in the grassy knoll was Roger McDowell in the episode, but they originally wrote it for Darryl Strawberry.
Wow!
Because at the time, he was going through a lot of legal problems, which we won't go into. So they decided to use Roger McDowell instead, and so that's my my pop culture, and of course Seinfeld's full of baseball. But since it's the anniversary of that spitting incident on the show, that's this week's pop culture reference.
Little known fact: Abraham Zapruder is my mother's cousin, and his wife Lil Zapruder was a great Jewish cook, and we have her cookbook sitting in our.
What really?
Yeah, you didn't know that about me?
That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
And Abraham died of a broken heart, essentially.
Abraham,
he wasn't happy after. Obviously, it was a
great
very
story.
Incident.
Not so keen on the ending.
Yeah.
Can
you freshen it up with a better ending?
Abraham Zapruder loved filming that and lived to be 107.
Oh,
Better.
That's a great thing. That's great thing. Anybody else got a celebrity in the family?
Yeah, I got a few.
Go on then, chuck them out.
So, well, British. You know this. My aunt was Claire Rayner.
Yeah.
And my first cousin is Jay Rayner, who writes for The Guardian. Pretty prominent guy out there.
We did mention this back in the day. I just wonder if some of our new listeners were aware that Claire Rayner is your aunt. That's fantastic. Or was your aunt? Fantastic. Yep. Eric, anybody famous in your family?
No, I just got no. I can't.
His father worked for KLM.
My father worked for KLM. Cool. There we go. As famous as
my mom was. My mom was a regular on General Hospital too.
Because you're a beautiful mom.
I worked alongside Johnny Gould and Josh Show and David Langell. That's how sad it is. Yeah.
Z level.
Yeah.
Zed.
They haven't actually created a level for us.
What's below Z? Oh, Z. Z is below Z.
Now it's time to put you out of your misery with the trivia, because with two youthful guys, I asked you earlier that since Vlad has now hit his 19th home run of the year, with at the tender age of 22, but I asked you, which of these players hit the most career home runs before the age of 22? Was it A. Rod? Was it B. Mike Trout? Or was it C. Bryce Harper? Now, who's going to go first? I will go with Josh Chetwin.
I never
Hard.
go first.
Hard. I'll go with A-Rod.
Johnny Gould?
I wanted to go with A-Rod, and now Josh has gone with it. I'm going to go with A-Rod, because if I'm wrong, then at least Josh is wrong as well.
Misery loves company, eh? Because we all know it's Bryce Harper.
Is it?
Oh,
Nice.
yeah. We all know that. Everybody knows that.
Okay,
Ask
okay.
anyone.
Okay, I'll go with Trout then. Since you're going with Harper, I'll go with Trout.
Fine.
So at least everybody's covered. We've got one winner and two losers. Who is it, Eric?
In no particular order. Let's go with Mike Trout. He hit 98 home runs before the age of 22.
Okay.
Bryce
That's a lot.
Harper hit 85 home runs before the age of 22.
Yeah, Dave.
Everybody
Eat it,
knows.
sweet.
Everybody knows it was Mike Trout.
Thank you. Thank you.
And A-Rod hit only 106.
No! I should have stuck to my instincts. Damn.
I had a good run. I got to tell you guys, I feel like I've had
Don't you win like every week now?
I've had a great run, and now that we're going to retire this for a little while, I'm going to just rest on my laurels.
Are
Nobody
you keeping a score? Do you have like a little like notches on your wall? Like every time you win in-game trivia, Josh, you can you write that. You got a little chart.
That was just for his love life.
Moving on.
I wrote an article that's going to come out in a few weeks, an academic article on a concept called the lump. I made up the term. It's a lump. It's lamentably unproductive mound performance. And that's an instance where a pitcher goes into a game, either as a starter or reliever, and does not get a single out. And Whitey Ford had that happen one time in his career. The next day, a gossip columnist wrote about how he and Mantle were going out and partying too much.
Ooh.
So the dude could party, but he could then rally. He was a rally guy.
And we learned a little bit about CC Sabathia this week, and how he drank on his off days and then took a few days off, and then he pitched, and very successfully. I guess there's something in the pinstripes.
But that's those colorful stories abound. I mean, Doc Ellis is the best of those stories,
Of course,
right?
yes.
When he threw a no-hitter on LSD. But if you listen to his oral history about that, like that guy was partying for like 2 days leading up to that game too.
If we want to compare sports, boys, I mean, rugby just knocks the socks off any other sport when it comes to the ability to party and still perform.
Act obnoxiously.
Honestly, I disagree, Goldie. If you go to the 1950s baseball, I mean, those guys hit it hard. They hit it all night. I mean, the stories of Mickey Mantle are legion, right? About the hangovers and drunk on the field and all that.
What about Australian wicketkeeper? Is it Hughes, who drank all those beers on the flight from
Correct. Merv Hughes
Australia
set the
to England?
all-time can record. Yeah, something ridiculous on the flight over for the Ashes.
So there's plenty of pissheads in baseball and rugby and all sports.
We would have such a waffle if Eric were here right
Yeah,
now.
no, we would.
He would,
Well, I have
he
to
would
say-
be full.
Guy, the reason I love Whitey Ford is because in 1961, you will know the year of my birth, he won both the Cy Young Award and the World Series Most Valuable Player Award. So he was the man.
Right?
Thank you. Get teasing down there to plinkety plonk, hit the piano. That means subscribe, bottom of the screen, like, get involved, be part of the family. Right, let's move it on. And it's trivia. Trying to set up the trivia question, and gives me great pleasure to tell you all that our trivia legend this week is none other than Mr. David Langell.
Okay, here's a great question for everybody. I love this question. Name the only pitcher.
No, hold on. You're not. You can't. It's got to be a multiple choice.
I'm going to give you multiple choice.
Okay.
Okay.
How could you're preempting me?
You said name the only pitcher. It requires.
Okay, that's how I usually ask it.
Right. The way you would phrase it is which of these pitchers?
Okay, choose the only pitcher to
From
win a
this
World
list.
Series game in 3 decades.
Ooh.
And our options are.
And your options are Bob Gibson. And by Bob Gibson, I don't mean the right-hander who pitched for the Milwaukee Brewers and the Mets from 1983 to 1987. I mean the Cardinals pitcher, Bob Gibson.
Thank you for the clarity.
You're welcome. Jim Palmer, who pitched for the Orioles. Roger Clemens, who pitched for several teams, and somebody who we've already heard on his name on this podcast a lot for a very short period of time, Whitey Ford, the chairman of the board.
So the question
let's
again
recap.
is how many decades?
3 decades.
You have to have won a World Series game in 3 decades, 3 separate decades.
Okay.
And your choices are Roger Clemens, Jim Palmer, Whitey Ford, and Bob Gibson, the Cardinals' Bob Gibson, not the Brewers' Bob Gibson. Just so we're clear. Okay, we'll have the answer a little bit later on.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. We
I
move
did it
on.
in kind of an Eric voice. Did anybody notice?
Where
No.
you weren't stumbling.
You didn't say
No,
you didn't say a boot and take off.
Who's the greatest pitcher, eh?
Have you noticed how much love we showed Eric in the early ones when we lost him to Wimbledon and the Olympics? And
now we just crush him.
And now we're just crushing him.
Don't leave us.
Because we figured out he's not listening. We thought
If you
would listen.
If you leave us, we'll crush you.
I'm gone next week.
Josh, it's all
Adios.
Can I point out, if we lose Josh next week, so if you're not available, Dave, it's me on my own crushing all 3 of you. That's
that'll be great.
Do it
I would listen to that.
You love the sound of your voice. It would be awesome.
It's Johnny Gould for 1 hour.
Right.
Solo.
Would you set yourself? Would you set yourself up? Would you say, Johnny, what do you think of this? Well, Johnny, I think.
I'd do a Ricky Henderson. Yeah.
Johnny loves Ohtani.
Oh, I like it.
Right,
Great
moving on. Ding, ding, ding.
I will tell you the story that will blow your mind, though, for both of you to say how old we are. Eligible in this year's draft is a senior. So he was eligible last year, didn't get drafted, but had a good season at Cal Berkeley. Was a player by the name of Darren Baker. That is Dusty Baker's son, who was the kid who ran onto the field in the 2002 World Series to pull the bat and had to be yanked off the field. We were doing that game.
Yeah. I remember that.
I was at that game.
Yeah, so we are old as sin because that guy is now draft eligible yet again. He was actually drafted out of high school, wasn't drafted as a junior.
That's incredible. You know, no wonder I get up and go to the bathroom like 5 times a night.
Yeah.
That is such a great memory. I do remember that very clearly. Okay, great stuff, boys. Let's move on. Our next story, robots, not perfect. I'm referring, of course, to the institution of an automated strike zone. I think we all think it's probably an inevitability at this point for MLB, especially since they're experimenting with a system in the minor leagues and partner leagues. But former MLB player this week, Jordan Pacheco, currently playing for the Lexington Legends of the Atlantic League, triggered a new debate when basically got video footage that does suggest the robot got it wrong.
Oh, 100% got it wrong. I watched that. That was absurd.
Ugly.
So how? I don't understand. If it's science, it's robotic. How can it get it wrong? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, maybe they didn't calibrate the cameras correctly. I have no idea, but makes.
Is that a reason to think this is going to be an experiment that will fail or should fail?
No. I mean, just like anything else, the kinks are being like a player. The kinks are being worked out in the minors. First of all, I don't like it. I prefer to have the human element in the game, even for balls and strikes. It's just something I don't mind. I don't mind a horrific call every now and then because it's just kind of part of the game. And I'm okay with that with balls and strikes. With, hits down the line and home runs, I think we should take a look at those. But Pacheco, if you listen to him, he says, I didn't have enough time to tweak the times that's happened to me this year. And the big issue is, should the home plate umpire have the power to overrule? I mean, if there's something so obvious, shouldn't he stand behind there and reverse the call?
Good point.
I think you're right, David. He was there. And the funny part was Pacheco is talking to the umpire who's, being told in his ear whether it's a ball or a strike. He can't do anything about it.
That's absurd.
Power. I agree with that. If it's
Bregman and I think Josh Donaldson, who's a big proponent of this, right? Am I right about that? Josh Donaldson, he wants computers. He wanted to see the overhead because he wasn't trusting that. It was a slightly off-angle center field camera, so he wasn't trusting that. But it was clearly
it looked really far off. Now maybe the catcher was set up a little inside because it was away, and he is correct. If you have the camera angle a little off, there's the potential for it to appear. But I think that was a ball. Looked like a ball to me.
Okay, well, this is the sign off of this story that I like. Pacheco apparently immediately doubles over in disbelief when the call was made and starts to argue with the umpire, and then leading to the stadium announcer playing "Let It Go" from Disney's Frozen.
That's a bad way to go out. And also, the play-by-play guy was about 30 seconds after calling it a ball. He didn't realize what had happened, and all of a sudden he had to make the pivot to strike three.
Well, on a more positive note with the All-Star game, I'm really looking forward to the Home Run Derby, which of course takes place on Monday, particularly with the lineup. Shohei was the first, Ohtani was the first to sign up, but there's some other big names. I think he's in his first round. He's up against Juan Soto. It's going to be really exciting. Perhaps even more so, JC, because apparently they're not going to use the humidor for balls, so they should be flying. This could be a grand slam of a Home Run Derby.
Oh, yeah, big time. I mean, it's going to be really exciting. We've seen some great home run derbies. I know we were all at the old Yankee Stadium when Josh Hamilton put on that.
That was the best one.
And that was at sea level, right?
Yeah.
You get up to the rarefied air of Colorado, a place. I mean, I've played here and I've hit balls when I was playing, near the end of my playing time, just in leagues here, that I thought, that's a lazy fly ball and it's hitting off the wall. I mean, the balls carry here, and particularly when you don't put them in the humidor to level it out, I think this could be really exciting. I hope that in the UK, they have the version of the Home Run Derby telecast that is StatCast with it, because to me, that's what's really fun, is to crunch the numbers on distances, on angles. I think it adds a lot to the excitement and the enjoyment of watching the Home Run Derby.
I think it's fair to say it surpassed the All-Star game in popularity.
Yeah.
Right? We can all agree that, which is a little bit sad. I mean, can we briefly address the uniform situation? They're not going to be wearing their colors of uniforms. I know we talked about that briefly, but now that it's actually going to happen, they haven't pulled it back. I thought maybe they would come to grips and figure out that nobody wants to see those nasty uniforms that they created for the All-Star game. Everybody wants to see all the players next to each other in their own uniforms. And now we're going to have to sit through that. That's a mess.
I agree. I mean, that may be us being old, though, because I've seen some Twitter, action saying that they actually like it. I agree. I don't like the uniforms. And I thought one of the funnest parts of it was seeing all the different jerseys on the field.
Totally. It's very colorful. I like the colors.
You seem to be ignoring the obvious here, guys. The reason why
merch.
The reason exactly
sale.
It's merch sales.
Who's buying that? I need to have a gross.
Hey, buddy, who's buying all 4 strips of Chelsea Football Club? Their away strip, their home strip, the European strip. They were off to play in the Isthmian League. I don't know. I mean, there are at least 4 different shirts. People are obviously buying them. They wouldn't be producing them. So sadly, buddy, money talks. Money talks.
We're old. We don't get marketed to anymore. We're done.
Right, JC, Baseball Book of the Week. What have you got for me, big guy?
So we alluded to the fact that the collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of the season. There will be probably very tense negotiations between the Players Association, which is the union for Major League players, and Major League Baseball. And if you want to prepare yourself, girder yourself for what could be a very contentious offseason, there is one book and one book only that you should read. And it's A Whole Different Ball Game by Marvin Miller. Marvin Miller is the father of, along with people like Curt Flood, is the father, at least off the field, of the union effort to organize Major League Baseball players at a time when they were very misused. This book is a fantastic read. It's well written. It really outlines what Major League Baseball players had to go through from the dawn of professional baseball and how they were treated as chattel. They were fungible goods for so long. And he talks about what it took to be able to turn the tide on that. Whether you can describe them in the same sort of manner that Marvin Miller dealt with, and Don Fear, who was a real pit bull, who was the head of the Players Association after that. I don't know whether that's the issue is. I think it's more level playing ground now. But reading this, it makes you understand when you say, players, they get to play a kid's game. It's so easy. And why do they ever complain? Read Marvin Miller's book, A Whole Different Ball Game, and really get a sense of the plight.
Fantastic. And I love the
fact
that
he got in the Hall of Fame. So pleased.
I'm particularly pleased that even when you are given the option to choose the Baseball Book of the Week for our listeners, you still don't choose your own book. So
can I tell you, Goldie, that I hope that when I'm gone, I'm away next week, if there's a show, then maybe the love will be there. Then I don't feel like I'm talking about myself. I'm self-promoting.
We'll do our best. We'll do our best. Right, baseball cultural reference. You're going to go with this one as well, JC. What have you got for us?
Yeah, so I was giving a lot of thought to this. We always do television. We do movies sometimes. We rarely do music. And I wanted to talk about a band that had dedicated itself, a supergroup, they're described as a supergroup, that dedicated itself to baseball music. And that's the Baseball Project. I don't know if either of you guys have ever listened to any of their music. They were founded primarily by two original members of REM, which is a very famous, group of the 80s and 90s. And their music's quite good. And they were founded in 2007. In 2010, they did a thing where they wrote a song every month based on what was going on in the baseball season. And then they had free downloads for the song. And I had a buddy who worked with them for a number of years and gave me their CDs because I wasn't going to go out and buy, songs about Satchel Paige. And the music's really good. So I recommend people go out, maybe do a little taster of a few of the Baseball Project songs. They're still together. They still gig. And it's worth it because it is the ultimate marrying of music and baseball. I mean, it's not necessarily my favorite baseball songs. We can go through, whether you like Center Field, various baseball songs, but in terms of quantity, that's where you're going to go.
Buddy, you're talking REM. Everybody Hurts, one of my all-time favorite tracks. It's almost like an anthem of my life.
Everybody, especially Johnny Gould, hurts.
And I think I'm going to hurt again in the trivia. Do you know, I don't think I've got the trivia right this season. I might have to check.
Not even once?
I cannot think of a single time, and we're on episode 16 of the season, so that is a pretty dire. Am I going to change my luck? Dave, put me out of my misery. Remind the listeners of the trivia question this week.
Yes, I will do that right now. And the question is, which of these players won a World Series game in 3 different decades? Is it Roger Clemens, Jim Palmer, Whitey Ford, or Bob Gibson?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Whitey Ford just simply because I know that he had 16 seasons and one of them was 61. So that suggests to me that he did catch the 40, 50,
and
60.
You just love this guy.
And I love this guy, and he won 6 World Series. So that's the only reason. That's the only logic to my Whitey Ford selection. JC, what are you going with?
Yeah, I don't think he was in the 40s or the 70s, Goldie. So I don't think you're right on that. And I don't think Gibson either spanned 3 decades. I'm pretty sure, but I have been wrong before. It's Jim Palmer.
Okay, the answer is not Roger Clemens, though I'm pretty sure he did pitch he pitched in the 86 World Series. He pitched, I believe, in the 99 World Series, and definitely in the 2000s he was in the Worlds, and it was with the Astros, but not in 05. Whitey Ford is correct. He did not pitch in the 40s. He came into the league in 1950.
No. Damn, 1 year. Come on.
Bob Gibson also misses eligibility by 1 year. So the answer is Jim Palmer, who won a game in 66.
JC, if there's
won games, they beat the Pirates.
Dave, I don't want to know.
71 and 79.
I'm not interested in any of that.
And he won 1983. The Orioles won. Cal Ripken won his only World Series title in 1983.
He's like a dump truck going downhill, isn't he?
I have done pretty well in trivia this year. I've actually it's been a pretty good trivia year. A great story about Jim Palmer. You probably read this a number of years ago about Jim Palmer. He was adopted, and he wasn't never really that interested. There were all these jokes that maybe he was somehow a Kennedy, that he was somehow like a bastard child of the Kennedy, and he would always joke about that. Not his first wife, but one of his subsequent wives. I don't know if he had 2 or 3, but she decided to make it a life's ambition to figure it out. And there was a great story in, I believe it was the Washington Post, talking about how they found his parents. They had deceased by the time they found him, but the story behind it was really gripping. I'll put it on our Facebook group.
I also believe that I'm 90% on this one, that Sandy Koufax's last at bat came against Jim Palmer because he retired after the 1966 season, and the Orioles beat the Dodgers in 1966.
So here's the question for you, Dave, because Johnny probably won't know this. Okay. Who looks
better?
Probably.
Why are you even using that word?
Who looks better scantily clad? Is it
Joe
A,
Namath?
Jim Paul, or B, Joe Namath, right? Is it Palmer or Namath?
I think, look,
Seiko.
Namath is just a beautiful man, I would say.
I'm going with Palmer.
Yeah.
Palmer had that fake tan thing going, worked for him.
Okay, this is taking a very disturbing turn, this element. So let's move
Joe
on
Namath
swiftly.
had great legs. You have to see his legs.
Guys,
In
we're
that
running out of
famous
time.
photo in Miami, when he's in Miami and Brent Musburger is there with his notebook.
Do you know, now I really do feel that I am Eric. I understand what Eric goes through, the pain and the suffering. It doesn't matter how much he shouts down, shut up, move on. You just ignore me. That's fine. I know my relevance. What are you up to, JC, next week that you can't be with us?
I am going to Italy.
Oh,
Downtown Italy?
Downtown Italy, yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Venice.
But are you going to be able to?
Perugia,
Are you going to be able to cope with the depression of a Euro defeat in the final?
Thankfully, we are flying on Sunday because Monday they'll still be partying or they'll be fast asleep from disappointment.
Yeah.
Okay. We get in Monday.
Are you going to be watching, Dave? Because I know you're a big football fan.
I will definitely be watching to see what happens.
And
go England, bring it home.
I'm loving that, JC. Dave, are we going to get a Go England from you?
A Go England? I'm not going to do something as pathetic as a Go England, but I will be watching. And
why is that pathetic? You just called me pathetic. Hey.
See what happens. Let's see what happens between Italy and England.
And fingers
in
crossed
the big soccer championship game.
Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you will be able to join me, Dave, next week. Otherwise, it's going to be the shortest Jonny and Josh show in the history of podcasts, as I'll be on my own talking Todd. There you go. That's it from us. Eric, of course, still working the Wimbledon and the Olympics and very busy, but we're looking forward to having our baseball brother back in our midst. JC, have a great holiday with the family in Italy, and we look forward to having your company again. Dave, you're a legend. Fingers crossed. I'll see you next week, big guy.
Ciao.